This is Robert Clinkybeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. We're going to take 20 minutes of your life to deliver some amazing business content from accomplished leaders to bring you value, scale your business, and better yourself personally. We hope you really enjoy the show, and I encourage you to share with your network so they can subscribe and we can expand these messages globally. We are also super excited to be supported by two brilliant sponsors. If you're tired of measuring properties, Site Recon platform fully automates measurements so you can focus on sales. So think measurements, think Site Recon. The other sponsor is Company Cam, who make it dead simple to communicate, document, and problem solve with guys in the field, no matter where you are. Company Cam brings documentation, communication, and liability protection together in one simple, easy to use app for you and your entire team. Company Cam is the only app every landscaper needs. Check it out. Hi, this is Robert Clinkybeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. I am super excited today to be joined by Monique Allen. So Monique is the founder and creative director of the Garden Continuum, is a master creator, interactive employer, published author, and fierce industry advocate. Welcome, Monique.
Thank you so much. I am really honored to be on this incredible podcast. It's awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, when I saw your profile and your bio come up, I thought, yep, she needs to be on my show. So we're really thank you for reaching out. So tell all my listeners a little bit about your background. You obviously enjoy the business, the landscaping business.
Yeah, I really do. I fell into it as late in my teens. It was nothing I knew about. It wasn't something that came from parents or grandparents necessarily. I fell into it and I landed like I landed home. I was a somewhat, trauma-riddled teenager that was spinning, not knowing what to do. And when I got into the land and started working in the landscape gardening, I came home. It stabilized me. And so it really, in those early years, was really, really important to me to sort of keep me on track. It gave me something that was purposeful and it just fantastic. And then it began to spiral. I decided to get my undergraduate in entrepreneurship. I decided to get my graduate in design. I started to pursue conservation, and I realized that there was these amazing threads of genius in this industry that you could follow, and that the more you followed the threads, the bigger you realized the industry was. There is no end in this industry, which is what makes it so phenomenal. Like if you get bored, you're not looking hard enough. You're not pulling on the threads. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. I got very interested in legislation, started working really actively in public service and legislation to make sure that our industry was well protected, not overregulated. And so that became really, really important. And then the environment to me is key and critical to success.
No, for sure. No, it's funny. You mentioned a point there about, getting bored in our industry. I mean, our whole industry is probably, $100 billion industry. So yeah, if you're getting bored in our industry, then yeah, you're not digging deep enough. So.
You need a bigger shovel.
Oh yeah, for sure. So a question popped up, and it was around why do you think? You talked about going from your troubled teens into jumping at the deep end and getting into landscaping and feel as though you found your home. Why do you feel lack of teenagers or the youth of today move into that landscape industry? What do you think the reason is, that barrier?
I do think that we have lost our respect for manual labor and for the trades. And I think that, the digital world has really shifted the mindset to other ways of actualizing industry and profession. And the truth is, there is such honor. This is such honorable work. It's not dirty work. It's honorable work. And it's really, really important and this is why your show is so important, because it is so important that those of us in the industry understand the honor in it and then we act honorable in it, and then present that, honorable path to children. And it's not so much the kids that don't want to do it, it's the parents who don't want their kids to do it. No parent hopes for the day their kid comes home and says, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to be a landscaper." And I've worked in education for a really long time, in education for the trades. And I honestly believe that our job as owners is to build organizations that are stable, compassionate, and supportive, so that when somebody comes home and says, "Hey, I just got this job," and their parents give them the 27 questions and reasons why not, they can say, "Oh, no, they have health insurance. Oh, no, they have retirement. Oh no, they do tuition reimbursement. So that we are competing in a culture of care for our employees that is incredibly honorable." So I think that's part of it, and part of what the message that I want to bring across, that this idea of the Life-Scape method and the idea of compassionate business means that we're looking at the people who work for us and helping them to scale their lives so that they can feel pride in doing this work. And I think little by little, that's going to change the mindset.
Not for sure. Yeah, I agree with 100%. Talk to me a little bit more about that, the Lifescaping.
Yeah.
When I saw your book and I saw, your Lifescaping brand, I thought that's, interesting concept here.
Yeah. And, of course, I was poking fun at myself in the industry when I said, "Stop landscaping, start lifescaping," because clearly I'm landscaping every day. The idea really was that when you commoditize an industry, when an industry becomes so production oriented, a little bit of the genteelness that is needed in nature and life force kind of goes away, right? Because we're trying to create predictable, repeatable sales, over and over and over, which means we're trying to systematize what we do. So the best correlation is in healthcare, what HMOs have done. They wanted to systematize health, and they wanted to get it moving very quickly so that we could see a patient every 10 minutes. What happens is you begin to marginalize care. And so while you can do that a little bit, you can't do it always. So Lifescaping was suggesting that instead of what I would call featurescaping, I want a fire pit, I want a patio, I want a deck, I want a swing set, I want a driveway, I want a garage, all those things, those are features. And in and of themselves, they're things. Not until we really consciously and intentionally put them together do they become a system. And the same is true with our soil. So if we want to get scientific and we go into the soil is the functional digestive tract for any plant. So if I've just murdered the soil by digging and driving over it and compacting it and stripping it of all its nutrients, I've created a digestive tract that doesn't work anymore. So no wonder my plants aren't healthy. So I was looking at featurescaping as a no-no, deadscaping as a no-no, and saying, well, what's the other option? Oh, Lifescaping is looking at the depth and breadth of what a landscape can be over time. So a family might have a landscape at first that's very simple. Then they have children and they want a play set. And then the children get older and they don't want a play set, but they want a basketball hoop. And then the children get a little older and they actually don't want a basketball hoop. They want a fire pit. So how are we evolving our landscape through the evolutionary story of our lives? And how are we doing that in such a way that we can legacy plant, so that we're actually planting plants that will outlast us?
No, I like that. And who is your target audience with that message? Is it going out to families? Is it a little bit families and some of the landscape companies out there, so they can include that in some of their branding or the messaging?
Yeah, so very specifically, the book was targeted toward, I basically called it high awareness individual with environmental aspirations, right? So they were people who wanted to either develop their own property. So they're the people who would go and take a master gardener's class, or who would, they have a membership at the botanical garden. They want to grow food in their yard. So they're really, really hyper connected to the environment. And then the companion audience was the landscape professional who wanted to actually have a system where they could go through a system with their clientele. So the book goes from sort of the very beginning kind of inkling of desire through the process of dreaming and then planning and then designing and then executing a lifescape over time right into the long-term care strategies of stewardship.
No, I love that. We talked again just before we recorded the call where, COVID obviously affected the launch of your book. But, I just with the landscape companies that I deal with, the demand for landscaping, the demand for improving their living environment around their house seems to have dramatically increased over the last 18 months. So, what are you hearing out there when you start talking to your audience and your people that buy your books? What are you hearing out there?
So there's two things that I'm hearing. I'm also a business coach for developing landscape companies. And the biggest thing that I see from our industry is that the demand is far outstripping the systems of the companies. And also the hands, right? The actual working power of the companies. So there's a huge supply demand imbalance right now. And the biggest thing that I'm seeing is the inability to hire, the inability to actualize any growth at all. And the narrative, which is there's nobody out there, there's nobody out there, there's nobody out there. So I've hired 14 people this year. There's clearly people out there. It's about understanding, kind of cracking the code of how we attract people. What are the methods? Warm body pulse, that's not going to get you what you want long term. It's attracting people into your company because you want to invest in them, and because you're going to actually do the work to cultivate a culture within your company that's going to attract people with like-minded values, that they want that. So in my company, because we deal so much with environmental, sustainable, regenerative landscape, I'm attracting a certain kind of clientele, and I'm attracting a certain kind of employee. And what it required was that I went from selling to trying to figure out how fulfillment worked, how organizational chart and team building worked. And so I think what I'm seeing out there right now is that we definitely have a challenge with the workforce, because they've kind of thrown their hands up and said, yeah, I'm not taking your abuse anymore, employers. You got to treat me right, or I'm not going to work for you. Yeah. And then we have people at home, even, just more than ever, being home, seeing their home and needing something that is more than just transactional work. They actually want someone to help them care for their home and their land. And that seems like a big shift to me.
No, for sure. Yeah, even when you mentioned master gardener, when you mentioned growing vegetables, I was thinking my wife, she's done that in the last 18 months. And yeah, she's now very much a part of our landscaping here, a lot more involved. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
But then, when you go back to the employer part, you've now got this opportunity where, because of COVID, people are less inclined to commute. They're less inclined to be in big offices. So now they've got an opportunity to, I've seen some ads out there where the desk is sitting outside. So here's your opportunity to, your work environment is outside and talking to people and being around nice things and plants and flowers. So, I think you're right with that messaging. If you get that messaging right, it could be very appealing.
Could be very appealing. And we just finished designing an outdoor, what we would call kind of like an employee break area, but an outdoor event and break area for a corporate office in Providence, Rhode Island. That's, a $250,000 project. And they wouldn't have invested in so much outdoor space before the pandemic. I'm doing a project with the old Medfield State Hospital land, which is going to be developed into condos. But right now they're doing all of these beautiful outdoor concert events. And so that area needs to draw in people to be there, but then also it needs to draw in donors so that they can make this cultural arts center amazing. So I think for all of us in this industry, we have to think a little bit outside of the box that we're used to being in, which is the repeatable, predictable work that has to happen all the time, to how do we help people expand their connection and their relationship to nature. And that is as much true with us as the landscape owner working with our client as it is us as the landscape owner looking for who could be our potential employee. I have employees from the corporate world. I have a new employee that used to be a client. So by embracing the idea that we as the pros could be trainers, could actually introduce somebody with a career change into something that's new and possible, there's so much there for us to embrace as this new workforce.
No, I agree 100%. And if a company start to think that way, I mean, what would be the first steps for them to start the ball rolling?
I think on the employment side, the first thing that an owner needs to do is to start to think about what they can give more than what they can get. And I think as owners, sometimes we have a little bit of a wall up because we're really concerned about, like, how much do I have to give them? How much are they going to want to get paid? What are they going to want from me? Because, as owners, we do feel a little run over after a while by all the demands of our employees. And if you have 3 employees, it's one thing, but if you have 23 employees, it's another thing. Forget it if you have hundreds, but if you have hundreds, you also have a management team. So for those smaller companies where the owners are still hyper connected to the workers, I think you need to start thinking about developmentally what programs can you offer. So let's say just an internship. Let's say working with agricultural schools and creating an internship. You can't bring an intern in and use them up and spit them out. You've got to bring that intern in and be prepared to teach, be prepared to embrace. And not only are we teaching skill, we're teaching life skills. And so I think, entrepreneurs by nature have so much to offer. The only reason why I think they don't offer more is because they're harried themselves. They're stressed out, and it's very hard to offer from an empty well. So fill up your well, get the support you need, and then try to think hard about how your community could be a really, really great source of employees that could come in, even if they're interns that are only there for 3 months. So I think that's really important. On the client end, I recommend having a very, very strict client avatar, so that you really create that client avatar really tightly. And then the other thing I recommend is be very, very mindful about your geographical reach. And if you are a bit spread out, see if you can keep your work on your main drive corridors. And I find when you do that, you're able to, just by virtue of ease, you can give far better customer service throughout your route. And I think those are the 2 places I would start.
No, I love that. Going back to the whole intern piece, even just back to my days when I had my company, I think one of the biggest challenges I had, and I think it's probably common with other owners, is the thought of bringing in an intern and then making sure you're properly nurturing them, I think can be overwhelming, because they think, well, I need to develop a whole program. I need to make sure they're, everything every day is somewhat scheduled for them, and they're not coming in and wasting their time. So I think that type of thought can be overwhelming, and it usually ends up that they don't bring anybody on because they don't take those initial baby steps. So how can you sort of overcome that? I mean, do you bring somebody else to develop a program, an intern program specifically for your company, or how How do you get?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I actually think you're bringing up a really, really great point, is that the solutions sometimes in and of themselves feel too big. Like, I can't do that. I can't do that. And so I think if we cycle back, one of the things that is kind of like my real zone of genius with working with companies is I'm trying to get them to get their internal systems in check, because look I made mistakes growing in my business. And before the Great Recession, I was scaling to multiple seven figures, and it was happening really fast, and it was great. But then when the Great Recession hit me, we scaled down to almost 50% of the size of our business. And I had to figure out, why did that happen? Like, what was the systemic flaw that made that happen? And it took me a while to figure it out, but I sort of set myself on this charge to figure out, how could I grow, but then also be hyper resilient? And part of it was that I had to deal with the internal systems, because you can sell. But if you don't have a strong organizational structure, and you don't have a really strong team, and you don't have a good fulfillment strategy, it doesn't matter how much you can sell. You're just going to be disappointing people. So this is a long way around of saying the way working with an intern works is that, first off, I wouldn't say that anyone's ever ready to have an intern, just like they're never ready to have a kid. You have to sort of be more ready emotionally to have somebody kind of connected to your hip a little bit and say, look, we don't have a total internship program. What I have is an opportunity for you to have your eyes and ears open, for you to do what I ask you to do when I ask you to do it. And my promise to you is that you will be in an area where you can see something happening that's great, and I will keep you safe. As long as you listen to me, I will keep you safe. And I think ultimately that becomes all you need, because an eager mind, somebody who wants to be in an internship, is going to be like a sponge that's really pulling from you. So you don't want a reluctant intern. And it'll kind of work out on its own. I think the main thing is safety, that as owners, we have to keep our people safe.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So wrapping things up here, one final question for you, and it sort of dovetails from the point you just made about fixing things internally. How can you propagate the right company culture?
It comes from the owner, 100%. And, they say culture eats strategy for breakfast,
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important for you to get clear about number one. So for me, health and family were really, really important. I needed to be able to have children and raise my family and work really hard. I am kind of a health nut. I love healthy living. I love to be out on my paddleboard. I love to do yoga. And so all of that is a particular lifestyle. So the values and lifestyle choices of the owner are the seeds of your culture. So don't try to shift it away from that. So that's number one. And then number two is, don't bend your culture for other people. One of the biggest mistakes I made, probably, I would say maybe about 15, 16 years in, something like that, is as my company was growing, I was starting to bring people on, and they were telling me, well, you should do this. You should do this. We as a company should do this. And I started acquiescing to the shoulds, and I started to feel uncomfortable in my own company. And so I really think that authentic connection that an owner has with who they are and what their values are and what their lifestyle preferences are, that is the seed for how you build your entire culture. And then you want to be proud and firm about that so that you can begin to attract people who also want that. So I have yogis, I've got craft beer lovers, because I love craft beer and I love yoga. And I have people who love the beach. I have, so everybody here has a dog. Half of them have rescued a dog. So you end up building a community that feels really holistic and like you want to be in it.
So how can people find out more, can connect with you, get your book? What's What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, well, absolutely. So Instagram is my happy place. So you can connect with me on Instagram. It's Monique.Allen. And that's my coaching feed. And so I would love to see you. I'm in the tail end of a 30-day live challenge, which has been super fun. Where I've just been dropping like little business tips all through. And then you can also follow me at the Garden Continuum, also on Instagram. And there's a link right in there for my book, and my website is thegardencontinuum.com. We have a shop and you can get the book. And I also have tons of free information. I have a landscape blog that's really vibrant. I'm wrapping up a series right now on regenerative landscape and supporting climate change, one backyard at a time to try to reduce climate change.
Love it.
And then I have a business blog, which in truth, I have not written for this year. I decided to give it a little rest. So I sort of moved into Instagram, but there's a ton of old content there that people can get for free.
Cool. Well, thank you, Monique. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've been on the show today and sharing your journey, sharing about your book. So thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's really been great. And I'll catch your address and I'll send you a book.
Okay, awesome. Great. Thank you, Monique. Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hopefully that was pure dead brilliant for you today, and we've got some great takeaways for your business and your personal life. This is Robert Clinkenbeard along with David Anderson, and we'd love to get you and your friends to join us on our journey. 2 quick things before you go, listeners. Check out our website, thecommerciallandscaper.com. You can subscribe, you can share with your friends, but more importantly, check out our sponsors. We have Site Recon, who are going to help to capture measurements on your property and create a really streamlined process. And we have Company Cam, who make it dead simple to communicate, document, and problem solve with guys in the field, no matter where you are. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.